And I'm ready. Go ahead and go when you're ready.
Let me let it load, sir, and then we'll start. Let me know if y'all see it.
Okay, I see it.
Yep.
All right, sir. Well, we're Group 3. We're covering OSX server this week. I'm Jason Kovic, followed by Ken Shirota and Christina Johnson and Sean Finder. And this is all for our class, which is BCIS 5379, Technology and E-Business. We're all attending Tarleton State University. Next slide. So as I said earlier, my name is Jason Kovic. I graduated with my bachelor's degree in network administration in 2011, December, from American Intercontinental University, which is a university that offers a lot of things online. Since I was in the Army for that time, it was easy for me to get my degree online. Also right now, because I'm so remote, I'm all over the place. It's hard for me to attend. Last year, December, I got my CompTIA Network Pro certification, which was awesome and great experience. I also have 12 years of leadership time within the Army at any point, guiding, leading, coaching, and mentoring soldiers of any crazy different sizes, 50 to 150 size elements. I was a company first sergeant for 2 years.
Wow.
Right now, I'm currently at a small financial company here in Conroe, Texas. We finance anything really. Mostly we're in the small, like vacuum cleaners, air purifiers, Kirby's. I'm sure everybody has heard of those. We deal directly with the dealers out there. So we're financing them and having them finance their consumers. So we have a lot of different operating systems within our environment, a lot of servers that we have to maintain and manage on a daily basis. And only having 2 IT personnel on site, we do quite a bit. We're kind of jack of all trades. So it's pretty interesting. We have a lot of freedom in a way, but it's pretty cool. So next slide.
Okay, my name is Ken Shirota. I'm a graduate of the MBA class of 2007, Tech State University, and I currently work for the 7th largest public electric utility in the nation as a database administrator. And I'm a SAS certified base programmer, Microsoft certified professional in Transact SQL, Microsoft Technology Associate in database, server, network, security, software development, and web development. Also happen to be a Cisco networking tech and Net Plus. And experience-wise, I have 6 years in the Army, 9 years in finance, and I've been in IT for the last 3 years. Next.
I'm Christina Johnson. I graduated A&M in 2012 with a bachelor's in biomedical science. I'm currently a personal banker and working on my degree in information systems here at Tarleton. I've also dealt with financial analysis and project management for a nonprofit. Next slide.
Hi, I'm Sean. I graduated definitely a few years back at University of North Texas. I had a radio, television, film degree. Went through life for a while there and realized that I wanted to get more into the computer age. So now I've gotten into this class, this program, information systems. Just recently got the Test-Out Network Pro certification. But currently right now I am working full-time at a National Property Preservation Company, just a property manager. We do a lot of management of contractors. You do have to use a lot of the systems that go in with that for communications and that kind of thing. So there's about 10 years of experience doing that, and hope to move on from there. But next.
Okay, technical specification. We're basing this on OSX 5.0, running on OSX 10.10 or 10.11 retail machine instead of a rack mount Xserve. And OSX 5.0 can be used for many different functions, but in our case, we're concentrating on the web server functionality. And as for the number of users is concerned, it really depends on that the server can handle, depends on many different factors, such as the hardware itself. If we have a rack mount Xserve, then obviously the number of users it can handle is quite a few. But then if we are running it on MacBook Air or something like that, then the number will be fairly limited. And it also depends on the content as well. If you're serving dynamic content with server-side scripting, then obviously the number will be limited. But then with static content, even a MacBook Air could probably handle quite a few. And it also depends on the duration of connections, because longer connection can increase the number of concurrent connections, which puts pressure on the web server. And OS X 5.0 web server is actually Apache. And Apache 2.04 handles does multi-threading. I think it's been that way since 2.0, so it shouldn't put too much pressure on the memory. But then it does have limitations. It spawns single parent process that makes and destroys child processes, and all those child processes can handle multiple threads. So it works fairly well. It's much better than 1 dot something that we used to have back in the days. And on the networking side, LAN side is usually okay, but then on the WAN connection is fairly costly, and that bandwidth could become an issue because of cost. As for memory requirement is concerned, the absolute minimum is 2 gigabytes of memory, and the size of disk is 10 gigabyte minimum, which is usually not a problem for Apple products. Next, please. And processor requirement. Apple does it a little bit differently. This is the absolute minimum configuration for different Apple platforms that can run OS X 5.0, and in here the least powerful one would be 1.6 gigahertz Intel Core Duo processor, and most Apple hardware nowadays comes with something much better, so it shouldn't be a problem. Next.
So if you already own a Mac and either run Yosemite or El Capitan for an operating system, the cost for the server is minimal at about $19.99, and it can be acquired through the App Store. This makes it a relatively less expensive option than other servers. The costs for updates are also cost effective, ranging from free to $20, depending on kind of how Apple puts it out there. The 5.0 is actually one of the free updates. In recent years, it's been about $20 for an update for the server. Troubleshooting from Apple can be costly if you get direct troubleshooting from Apple, but with a growing network of support online, you can find a lot of answers and troubleshooting help. Next slide, please.
So I love Apple products. I'm a huge fan of Apple. I own 3 of them myself. So when I saw that we were doing an OS X, I was super excited because this is one of these servers that are not well known for anything really. We're so used to 2008 Windows, Microsoft, and how well they are. But one thing that I need to caveat with Christina, the cost is just attractive. $20. I mean, get out of here. You can't get a server, a 2008 for $350. That's almost bare minimum. And that's if you get it on, some other places. So that's one of the great features that I see, I have to say. Also, one of the other great options that we have for the OS X server is using Time Machine technology. This is great. A lot of us that have to take daily backups of our infrastructure and databases, we know by doing these backups by Veeming or Sync Center or any of those things, that can also be costly because that's extra applications. I say application because I'm a Mac guy. Software. I mean, that stuff costs thousands of dollars. Time Machine comes with OS X, so that's wonderful. And it can also be attached to an iSCSI or a RAID 10 configuration so that the backups, and that's essentially what Time Machine is. It's a backup center for all the Macintoshes on the network. It syncs those machines to the Time Machine and backs them up So that's a really wonderful feature that OS X offers. They also offer the same file sharing, that they have, and also a lot of things you have to kind of integrate hardware, special hardware for your servers, because you have to have this type of hardware to operate on this type of, operating system for this server. OS X is very, very uniform. It allows you to use OS X server on your existing hardware for your MacBook Pros and many other server configurations. Next slide.
So the perception for the OS X server, it's popular among creative individuals and people who, smaller businesses and individuals who want to host their own web server, mainly because it is so easy to use and easy to work with, especially for people with little networking experience. So that's a big perception, that it's just so easy to set up and use and utilize. And you also get a lot in a single powerful package. Like Jason was saying earlier, it has a lot of features and for $19. And that's really a really big thing to people, I think. From what I've read online, people love this feature, this idea that you can have an Apple server for $19 and have it do multiple website hostings and just a plethora of other features. Next slide.
Okay, user interface for the OS X server. The server uses graphical user interface, which allows users to interact through graphical icons. It's pretty much easy, user-friendly, easy to maneuver through, find things, makes server setup and management extremely user-friendly. It is very intuitive as the server apps walks you through the configuration. There's a lot of definitely, the simple language. It's easy to understand, and both to the technical, non-technical users. The server app also provides an easy to use tools to manage it. There's Apple products, like other Apple products, the server is user-friendly. And the intuitiveness to it, along with it being the GUI or GUI, making it easy point and click setup, management, and use. The features do include the file sharing, the caching, serving, the caching server, profile manager, the time machine, of course, like Jason mentioned, which is very, very, very awesome that you can have that included. And then, so on, calendar, contacts, mail servers. And then, of course, you can go to that link there and see many other features that you can see that come with Apple and this server. Next.
Okay, scalability. Apple used to have this rack-mountable product called Xserve, but now that it's been discontinued, OS X 5.0 is not exactly considered an enterprise-grade web server, but then it can function in so many different ways. It's just that you have to get a hardware, and a lot of times it's used as a dual-purpose machine, a desktop and a server. And it can be scaled in several different ways. It can be scaled out with a load balancer up front, like appliance from Cisco or something like that. But then if you install just one load balancer, that ends up becoming a single point of failure. So you need to add two and have them go through a heartbeat communication that could cost a little bit of money. Or you could do DNS round robin, as in one DNS entry returns 3 different IP addresses. But then if you do that, due to client DNS cache, the load might become very uneven. And you could use, or you could do DNS by service, such as site1.domain.com goes to web front end 1 and site 2 request goes to web front end 2. But then it's a static assignment, it's not dynamic. So it does not scale all that well if you go that route. And as for scaling up, you could just go by very powerful Mac Pro. That would do a lot. But then, of course, there is a hardware capacity limitation if you're trying to scale up. And also the cost becomes an issue as well. Next.
And then we have just the summary of everything we've talked about. There's quite a few pros, but yeah, there are some cons that we mentioned. But just talking about the pros, obviously the affordability is incredible with, being $19.99. It's a great option for smaller business and home networks, especially not so much for the bigger corporate companies and that kind of thing. But user friendly, easy to set up, manage, and use, of course. But there are there's very minimum system requirements, lots of features that we mentioned. The cons, definitely the scalability of the server. There's not much you can do with that other than what Kim was mentioning before, and the scalability. But run into issues with the higher user numbers. That's definitely going to be a problem when you're dealing with that. But I don't know if you want to add to anything, you guys, Jason, Christina, or Ken.
Good.
It's a Mac. It just works.
Exactly.
That's what I love to say. I mean, that's the only thing I would add to it is Macs are, you know that they're going to just operate. They're going to function the way you want them to. Is there going to be problems? Yes, of course. But when you open up your Mac and it makes that glorious sound of the dong, that's how I like to call it, all is well in the world.
You're one of the few Apple guys I've ever met.
I'm a Mac guy through and through. I'm sorry.
Have you gone through the videos that I put out there, the funny videos?
Sir, I've seen yours, the first class that I've taken with you. I can't remember what it was at this point, but yeah, I saw it a couple times.
So you've seen the Mac killed my inner child.
It did.
Okay. Very good. It's a great presentation. I really appreciate that. You guys did get tasked with kind of one of the tougher ones where there's not a lot of information that's out there and readily available. So I appreciate your efforts in jumping into it, and you did manage to find a lot of good, useful information. As far as it being built on Apache, describe the differences between the user interface from an Apache web server versus the way Apple's implementation of it.
On the user interface side, or
on the user interface side.
Oh, okay.
It's a good question.
Yeah.
I don't actually know that, so I'm taking notes.
Okay. Not a problem. Not a problem. I was just a question I had coming out of that. And as far as from a performance perspective, you were talking about how it's not particularly scalable. So how would you compare it to, say, something like IIS or Apache in terms of, widespread use? Is it something that you would see? I mean, how would you make that comparison?
Okay. If one were to make a comparison, then it would be a very different market, I would think, because iOS is supported by Microsoft, and Microsoft tends to do more of enterprise-grade products, such as running SharePoint Farm on a multiple iOS machine and things like that. And so it's very different from Microsoft approach, this Apple's approach. I think their markets are completely different. And as for comparing to regular Apache, it actually uses Apache. So in terms of performance, they should be fairly similar. But then I have to admit, even with Apache 2.0, it still spawns parent process and multiple child processes. I think Tomcat only does it with one process, and Nginx is the same way. So I think it does have a little bit of limitation, but on the good side, whenever you have multiple child processes, you do have redundancy. Even when one goes out, the other child process will keep on serving other threads. So it's pros and cons.
Okay. The final question sure. Oh, I'm sorry. I thought I heard something. The final question that I had is really more, it's not about the presentation at all. Rather, it's about using Zoom. What did you think of this process as far as you guys preparing for the assignment, as far as giving the presentation, things like that? What did you like about it? perhaps could be better.
Well, I know there was the delay. I didn't know what happened there, but I don't know. As far as like when we had, I got on, I think at 2. I got on a little late, but it was at 2, and we were, I guess, there's technical issues there.
That was probably on my end. I was still in my Zoom session from earlier, but
Gotcha.
when I was in my Zoom session earlier, I just ended the presentation and I still had my Zoom session open. And so I assumed that when you guys got on, it would just automatically pop in. And when it didn't, I shut down Zoom, went back in, and that's when everybody was there. So that was my fault. I apologize for that.
No, it's no worries. Just was curious.
Yeah. Anything else?
I like the fact that we can screen share. That's super helpful. I
Okay.
know with Blackboard Collaborate, you have a little side window that displays what you want it to, but this actually is a little bit more user-friendly, I feel.
Okay.
Yeah, I like it.
It's something that I have been trying to work towards over a few years now, and kind of moving in that direction. And I was using more asynchronous approaches in the past, and so it's kind of been a goal of mine to get towards more of a synchronous session. And so this is kind of a first step in that direction. That's why I'm asking groups what your impressions are and things like that. So that's all I've got for you here. I really appreciate your taking the time to do this and figuring out a way to do this. If I could get one or more of you to actually submit the assignment, you don't have to actually submit anything. I just need to be able to get access to it so that I can score the rubric. So that's really all I need is somebody to do that. Since it's a group assignment, it doesn't matter if one or all of you do it. It doesn't really matter.
Sir, I already submitted it to you.
Perfect. Awesome. And well, that's all I've got for you today.